What's up, you guys? Happy Wednesday. So I'm realizing my hair looks a little bit crazy. So, yeah, I should have looked in the mirror, but whatever, you guys, this is real, right? So day 3, talking about fear and love. I'm going to stop looking at my hair. It's fine. So we've talked the last couple days about like what it feels like to make decisions from fear and love with some examples. I talked about my wine story. Yesterday we talked about why, hi Ted, why it's so important to slow down, to breathe, and to get into our bodies so that we can actually assess like what's happening, and then we can learn to create a different relationship. So the next piece of that is, okay, great. It didn't happen overnight. I don't expect that you're all like, yeah, I'm in my body. I know what it feels like to feel safe, right? So once we get into our bodies, now we have to understand it's like, what happens when we get there? So what happens when we slow down and we breathe and we bring awareness and calmness to our bodies? What do you think this is doing? Still going crazy, right? So the next step of once we've been like, okay, so I understand that it's fear. And so we're going to back up for a second. So most of us, and I was just talking to a client about this, is that something in life triggers us, right? And so in life, we can have tons of triggers. So if someone says something that triggers you because like, you see the truth in them, right? So like when you see someone else's like darkness or something that bothers you about them, it's actually a reflection on you, which is hard to get into, but we'll go there one day. But someone can trigger you and you're like, oh, that sends me like this reaction, right? So I was talking to one of my clients today about being triggered, and her trigger is like just running, right? So she got triggered last week by me. And it was like, I can't do this. I don't know. And there's just like this, like, whoa, freak out, like turned and ran. Right. So, I talked to her today and she's like, yeah, I like legit told people in my life, like, I can't be around you. I can't this, I can't that until I'm blah, blah, blah. Right. Which is now it's funny because I knew what was happening for her. Like I knew she was in the midst of a breakthrough, but didn't feel really good to her. And so I was telling her that, and it brought up this memory in me. When I was going through my program, we had a walking meditation. So it was like week 7, and it was just like, go walk and identify your triggers and your protectors, right? So the way it works is you get triggered by something, and we all know that feeling where you're just like, ugh, right? And it creates this reaction. And then you have a protector. So protectors are things that come in, like protectors are something you developed as a young child. Hey, Reardon, thanks. That you were like, oh, I have to do this to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel whatever. So I did these actions, right? So an easy one is like the person that always plays the victim, right? So if something happens to someone and they're like, oh, I've got to be the victim, that's their response, right? That's keeping them safe. And that's probably how they felt like they had to get love as a kid, right? So I realized for me, when I was going through my program, that we were supposed to go on a walking meditation, right? And we know that I was stuck in hustle, which is also fear. And like I liked to run. And so I was like 5 minutes into this walking meditation, and I legit just started running. And I was like, oh, damn, I actually run. Like I straight up just run from my problems, right? Like I distracted myself by running. I was physically running, and I was like, wow, here's the thing. So think about that when it comes to fear. So if something scares you for whatever reason, like fear of failure, fear of success, just fear is your motivator. And you're like, okay, what do I do when I'm feeling that sensation, right? So what is my visceral reaction, and what do I do, right? And for me, I was always a runner. And I'm like, I think I actually was just running from my problem. And back in the day, I some of you know, some of you don't. I was married when I was very young, got divorced at like 27. And when I got divorced, I joked that I was like a country song, like I bought a big lifted truck and a snowmobile and a puppy. But my dog and I used to run. Hi, Lisa. We used to run every day, like 5 miles. And my rule to myself was that I wasn't allowed to think while I was running. So I was truthfully avoiding the fear and avoiding everything that was going on. So I want you guys to think about like, where do you have fear, and how, like, what's your gut reaction to it? So when I say visceral reaction, I mean, like, what's your gut reaction when you're triggered or you're scared or you're fearful of an event or something? Like, what do you do? Like, what's your go-to move? So for most of us, that go-to move doesn't serve us, right? But it's what we've done to feel safe. And so, what you guys need to understand, and we might have a guest on this little it's not a podcast, on this video. Sky, you want to say hi? So Sky Pie's here. Say my first day of school today. My first day of school. Okay, say bye. Bye. And we digress. Okay, so we have fear, and then we're like, well, what do? Hold on, honey. You gotta go. Okay, can you go? Sorry, you guys. So we have fear, and then we have to realize, like, okay, what's our reaction? And we slow it down and we breathe into it. But then once we breathe into it, now what, right? Because what do we do now? So what you guys really need to understand is that we're never going to isolate our brain from our body, right? Like that doesn't work. So what we have to do is we actually have to change the story, shift the sensation, and change the feedback loop, right? So if I have fear, which could feel like anxiety, which could feel like stress, which could feel like whatever that fear is, my brain is like, oh, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling, that's hard to say, you're feeling fearful. I'm going to go create evidence to prove that you're right? To be like, oh yeah, you should be afraid of that. We shouldn't be here. This isn't safe, right? So what you get to do is you get to say, oh no, I see you, fear. I feel you, fear, anxiety, whatever that emotion is. And you get to be here, right? Like we don't have to push it away. Like we don't have to be like, I don't want to feel that. That's not okay, right? You get to say like, that's cool. I feel you. I'm safe. Like I appreciate to your protector. We named all of our protectors George. Just a funny story. Anyway, you're like, I appreciate you. I see that you're here trying to keep me safe, but I'm good, right? And so instead of like pushing away the protector or pushing away the emotion, you just get to be in it and you get to say, okay, I'm good. What is actually going on? What story was here? What sensation in my body was there? Now that I've taken a deeper breath, what's really going on, right? And what is this here to teach me? And so what you can start to learn is that you can have fear and act anyway, right? Or you can have fear and just sit with it, because that's for most of us. We don't want to feel. We don't want to feel scared, sad, we don't want to feel any of those low vibe energies. We're fine with feeling the good ones, but we don't want to feel the low ones. But the truth of the matter is you have to have both, right? You have to have one to know the other. So you get to sit with it and you get to say, okay, what am I actually afraid of? What's the story? And then what's the truth, right? Because for so many of us, you guys, like, the truth is not what you think it is, right? And so my favorite questions to ask are like, is this real? Is this mine? And is it true, right? Because so often we have fears that have come from a long time ago and we're still living into them. And maybe it was never even our fear, right? Maybe it was a fear from our parents or something that happened when you were 7 on the playground. And I promise you guys, that's what's actually running the show. We'll talk about inner child. But so it's like, okay, I can sit with this fear. I can face it, because what we face dissipates, right? When we ignore it, when we avoid it, it just keeps showing up. Have you guys ever had those lessons in your life where you're like, why does this keep happening to me, right? Like how many of you had dated the same person like 5 times, even though it was a different guy or girl, right? But the same lesson keeps showing up for you. It's because you haven't learned the lesson, right? Because you haven't been with it. You've just pushed it away and you've been like, oh, it was them, right? Like they were your trigger. So on the fear side, you get to sit with it and you get to say, okay, let's go worst case scenario, like whatever your fear is, right? If your fear is, if you take this new job, you're going to lose all your money and, and you'll be living on the street, right? So what if you looked at that fear and you're like, okay, how likely is that that's really going to happen, right? Because for most of us, we just need to know that we're safe. So if you can play out worst case scenario, you're almost always going to be like, oh, that's probably not really going to happen. That's probably really not that bad. So then you get to take that fear, you get to love the fear, you get to appreciate the fear, and then you get to move through it anyway, right? And the more that we do this, and the more we can catch ourselves doing this, then we can really say, okay, like it happens, and we're like, oh, that's just a protector, that's just a trigger, I'm good, I got this, what is this here to teach me? And then we just get to move through it. And then it gets easier and easier to trust yourself, to love your fear, to understand that it's there to teach you something, and then you just get to grow through that. So the beauty of it is that fear and anxiety and all that stuff that we don't want to feel, triggers and all that stuff, like that's actually a gift. That is such a gift to you of saying like, okay, what do I really need right now? What did I used to do? What story do I not want to live into? And what do I get to do from here, right? So it's such a cool thing when you can shift from fear into love, but when you can appreciate the fear, love the fear, and then move through it instead of trying to avoid it, which is what so many of us do. Like we just don't want to be in it because we don't know what's going to happen. So anytime you have that fear, Just take a second, slow down, pay attention to the sensations in your body, the thoughts in your mind, and then really see if you can recreate that. Because over time, so I talk about like anxiety and excitement, right? Like if we feel anxiety, we're like, oh shit, this is not going to be good, da da da. But you can actually change that feedback loop to be like, oh, that's excitement. I'm so ready. Let's do this, right? Like, this is awesome. This is exciting, right? Like, I want to jump because I'm excited instead of I want to contract because I'm fearful. I heard there's a guy, I can't remember his name now, but he wrote a book called The Trash Man to the Cash Man. And we saw him speak at one of the gym events that we go to, and he had the best analogy. And so really think about this. So we talked about yesterday that fear is just excitement without breath. It's also without movement, right? So I'm talking a lot in life about breath and movement. So his analogy was if you have a car, right? Say you've got your brand new Corvette. Let's just use that analogy. And it's in your driveway, okay? And you've got the gas to the floor and it's in park, right? What's happening? It's just spinning its wheels. It's creating a whole lot of not good things going on, right? The engine's about to explode. The tires are going to fall off. Like awful things are happening, right? That's anxiety. But what if you were doing that same thing, but you were on the highway and you got to go 150 miles an hour? That's excitement, right? So the only difference is movement. So when you feel fear, if you stay stuck in it and you don't breathe and you don't move, that's when it wins. But if you have that feeling and you choose to breathe and calm down and then act and move and think about what's happening, then everything opens up. And all of a sudden, it's all so much easier and it's all so much lighter. So I hope that helps you guys. I'll be back tomorrow with day 4 and maybe on Saturday do day 5 because I feel like 5 days are more fun. So I hope you all are awesome. Thanks for being on here. Share this if you think somebody needs to hear it. And keep a lookout for my 5-day that's going to come out. That's going to come out the 16th of September. So keep a lookout for that. So if you guys want more information on just shifting your life in general from fear into love and all those things, let me know and I will get you on that list. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.